Good afternoon, dear colleagues and friends. We are happy to welcome you on our today's webinar.
We are ready to start our online event, and today we will talk about project management in the age of automation. Will the machines ultimately replace people?
Let's wait for the rest of the audience before we start and do a quick sound check. Please type any sign in the chat so I will be able to know that you hear me well. Okay, great. I can see that everything goes smoothly, and we go on.
You can also join this webinar on Facebook in real time. Today we are starting to broadcast our videos on Facebook in a test mode. Follow our official Facebook page.
Please let us know if it's a good idea and we will keep this tradition. Just share, like, or comment our live videos to leave your feedback.
You all know where we store our videos of UTIC speeches and webinars. Just follow the green arrow. It's video section of our website utic.eu.
And you are always welcome to subscribe to our YouTube channel not to miss our best online events and video publications. And let me introduce today's speaker. Tucker Johnson is a co-author of The Great Theory of the Translation Company and manager of Nimdzi Insights, one of the language industry's leading analyst and consultant firms.
He has a great experience in LSPs managing operations. Tucker focuses on large account management and building out large-scale global programs.
Our today's meeting is going to be hosted by me, Irina Wieser, UTIC PR Manager, and Anna Krajneva, Head of Production at InText. Anna has a vast experience working as a Head of Project Management Department.
Today's topic is way too interesting for project managers. So, will our profession be in demand in future, or we will need to find another job?
Now it's time for me to turn it over to our speaker. And before we do that, I want to ask all of our attendees to send questions in the chat window. I will ask them in the end of the presentation. Hello, Tucker. How are you?
Doing well, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you have the mic.
Awesome, and you can see my first slide here.
Yes, I can see the first slide, and I think everybody can see it as well.
Very good, very good. Well, thank you so much for the warm introduction, and thank you to UTIC for inviting me to do this webinar. I was invited back in November, I think. They called and said, Irina actually emailed and said, can you do this webinar for us? And I said, that's awesome, that's great. And I didn't realize back then that it was going to be 5 months later. So I've had lots of time to prepare for this webinar, and they've been very gracious about rescheduling a couple times. So thank you for the warm introduction, and we'll get right into it here. So as has already been said, what we want to talk today about is the future of project management, right? Everybody is talking about automation in our industry. It's the hot new thing, technology, automation. Seems like all of the conversations are focusing around these points, but what does that mean for us as project managers moving forward, right? Where do we fit into the larger scheme of everything? Will we still have jobs next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? If so, what will they look like, right? These are the questions at the top of everybody's mind. And I wanted to present today on it because I feel that while everybody's very eager to talk about automation and what it can do for us, and rightfully so, because there's some very exciting stuff happening in that field, we oftentimes forget that there are humans behind the automation. There's humans behind the technology. So what role are we playing, and what role will we be playing in the future? A little background about myself, and I already got a very gracious intro here, but just to give you some background on where I'm coming from, because I think it's relevant to the points I'm going to discuss today. Currently, I am working at Nimdzi Insights. We are a market research and consulting company specializing in the localization and internationalization area. We work with buyers of localization. We work with providers of localization. We work with anybody interested in learning more about language services in general, whether that be translation, technology, management, interpreting. We cover the whole gamut, specifically around localization. My background, though, is primarily in LSPs. I've worked for language service providers my whole career, and I started off in project management. And so I like to say, once a project manager, always a project manager, right? It's my background, it's my passion, it's what I love doing. I still consider myself a project manager to this day, and I still love providing that service. And I feel it's a useful tool that it's a useful skill to have, being a project manager, that can serve me no matter where I go, no matter what I do. And I imagine that a lot of the folks on the call today are also coming from a project management background, because that's the title of this presentation. And welcome, you are my people. So we can relate to each other on that level. Over the course of my career, I've managed a lot of different types of accounts. I've worked for different types of companies. I've worked for very small companies. I've worked for very large companies. I've specialized recently in large account management and onboarding new accounts. So accounts $20 million plus, how do we onboard them into our LSP, make sure that processes are set up, workflows are set up, everything's running smoothly? How do you maintain those relationships? I also think it's very relevant to point out that I haven't just worked on large accounts. I've worked on very small accounts. I've worked on accounts that are anywhere from $5,000 to $25 million, right? And while it's tempting just to talk about our large accounts that we work on, I think some of us on the call can probably relate that sometimes it's the smaller accounts that are actually much, much more difficult and much more challenging from a project management perspective. So just because an account's large doesn't necessarily make that more difficult. It may be more complex, but sometimes the smaller accounts may be more challenging. As Irina mentioned, I am the co-author of a book called The General Theory of the Translation Company. We published this last year with my co-author Renato Beninato, who some of you may know. I believe he did a webinar earlier in the season for UTIC. I'm going to be talking about the general theory today a little bit, just to provide some necessary background information. So I'm going to start out talking about the general theory of the translation company to start, not the book, but the actual theory, to provide us all a little background. If you've read the book, or if you've heard me or Renato talk about it before, then this will be a nice refresher course for you. It'll also be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end if you have any clarification points. The reason I want to start talking about this is because the general theory provides a framework for the rest of the conversation that we're going to have, particularly around how LSPs add value through the core functions: project management, vendor management, and sales. And we are going to talk about all three of those, which I'll get to in a moment. Thirdly, I want to move on to some actual data and some research that Nimdzi Insights has done in this area, taking a look at actually what do clients want, what are clients looking for, and how can LSPs and the project managers working at LSPs provide better value to them. And then we're going to turn our eyes to the future, and I want to spend a deal of time on this. How do we as project managers deal with the changes that are coming? How do we adapt and evolve to continue to meet the needs of our customers, add value, and keep our jobs. That's what we're all interested in, right? So moving, and as they mentioned, if you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to write those in the tool, and we'll get to those at the end. So this is our brief introduction to the general theory of the translation company. As you see in this graph here, this represents, we have three components here. We have the market influencers, the support activities, and the core functions. Taking a little bit closer, the market influencers are basically the external forces that affect an LSP within the industry and help them define what strategy, what niche they want to go into. The support activities are 7 support activities that are carried out by every language service provider. We have management, structure, culture, finance, facilities and HR, technology, and quality assurance are all the support activities. And I'm brushing over the market influencers and the support activities a little bit, just really briefly talking about those so that we can get to the core functions, the 3 core functions of the LSP, which is what we want to focus on today. And for the core functions, we have project management, we have vendor management, and we have sales. These are the 3 things that an LSP does to add value to the language services value chain. Now, I want to stress this point just a little bit, because in our general theory of the translation company, it's very important to realize that these are the only ways that LSPs add value. The 7 support activities that I just listed, management, structure, culture, finances, quality assurance, technology, all of those do not add value to the language services value chain. Those enable the core functions to add value: project management, vendor management, sales, right? You notice quality is not on here. Quality is a support activity. Quality is a way, a method, or a support activity, I don't know how better to say it, that allows an LSP to add value, but it doesn't necessarily add value itself. Why? Because one of the primary theses of our book is that language services companies don't provide, let's talk about a translation company, for example. Translation companies don't add value through translation. Translation companies add value through their service offerings. I'll repeat that. Translation companies do not add value to their clients through translation. Clients do not go to an LSP and buy translation, they buy services. Why do I say this? Because every LSP, and it may be different for different LSPs, but every LSP that I've ever worked for doesn't actually do translation. The translation is done by freelancers. The translation is done by other companies. The translation is done by anybody but the LSP. I've never, as a project manager for an LSP, small, medium, or large sized LSP, I've never actually sat down at my desk as a project manager and sat next to a translator next to me. And I know that is a model at some LSPs, in which case the model can be tweaked a little bit. But I've always provided project management services. Another very important point to set the tone for the rest of this conversation is that when we're talking about the 3 core functions, we're talking about functions. We're not talking about a job title. So, project management, vendor management, sales. I'm going to be talking about the sales core function throughout this presentation. It doesn't mean I'm talking about salespeople or business development directors or marketing people. It means I'm talking about the function of sales, which can be carried out by anybody in the industry. It can be carried out by the project manager. It can be carried out by the CEO. I talk to LSPs all the time where they don't even have a sales team. The sales function is carried out by the CEO or by the owner. Some smaller LSPs I've worked at do not have a vendor manager or a vendor management team. That function of vendor management is carried out by the project manager. right? So very important to realize that when we're talking about the core functions, we're not talking about job title. And just a quick recap here, the way that the industry is set up is this very tiered structure in the value chain. We call it the language services value chain, with the buyers at the top. And then underneath the buyers, you have this sometimes very long chain of different companies that are either directly or indirectly working for the ultimate buyer of translation services. So working for a large company like I have in the past, multiple language service provider, we would work with single language service providers or regional multiple language service providers. So as a large company, I'd be providing 100 languages to my client, and I'd be working with a regional supplier in India or the Americas or where have you, or Africa, and they were providing regional languages. Sometimes they were working with even smaller vendors or translation agencies who were providing single languages. Sometimes they were directly contracting with the contracted language professionals or freelancers, which also known as the translators in most cases, right? But at each step of this process, there is value added, right? And there has to be, because why else would a buyer of language services work with a multiple language service provider to give them 100 languages and pay 2, 3 times, 4 times as much money as they would per word rate, of course, as they would if they went directly to work with freelancers, right? It's because at each step, value is added to the language services value chain. And as you can see on this slide here, the value is added through the core functions. So the core functions, once again, project management, vendor management, and sales. And then each LSP takes a markup on top of that. Why? Because we all have to make money, right? And if value wasn't being added to the language services value chain, trust me, the buyers would be working, all of the buyers would be working directly with translators. This industry has been around for a while. I believe it has reached a semblance. It's never going to reach equilibrium because they're changing so quickly, right? But the market has had plenty of opportunity to adjust. And this is where it has landed with this model of this tiered model of the language services value chain. So let's take a little bit closer look at each one of these, starting with project management. We're going to start with project management, remembering, though, that this is not a function, or it is not a job title, it is a function. So it can be carried out by anybody in the industry. Typically, project management is carried out by the project manager. It's not an uncommon position. Pretty much all LSPs have the position of project manager. And really, to break it down at its most basic level here, project management consists of managing 4 things: people, time, money, and technology. We manage people, we manage translators, we manage internal resources and external resources. One thing people don't always realize is that project managers spend a lot of time managing their colleagues, and they spend a lot of time managing their bosses, and they spend a lot of time managing their clients. And if you're a project manager who does not understand the value of managing your client or managing your boss, then let's talk, right? You reach out to me afterwards, because I think that's one of the most important thing a project manager can do, is help set expectations between all these different groups of people. Time. Scheduling. Clients want things on time. They need someone to build a schedule for them. And as I'm talking about each of these, let's talk about the possibility for automation for a lot of these, right? There's a lot of tools. There's new tools coming on the market every day to automate these processes, but some of these just can't be automated. For example, if we're talking about time, there's lots of great tools out there to talk about automating the schedule creation process, and there's project management workflow tools and stuff like that. So this, in theory, can all be automated. As we'll see with a lot of stuff as we go through this presentation, maybe it can be automated. Lots of stuff can be automated in an ideal world, right? It's when stuff goes wrong that the automation starts breaking down. Either something going wrong with the technology or something going wrong elsewhere, right? Talking about money, financial forecasting, invoicing, purchase orders, budgeting. These are all things that, in theory, if everything's ideal, can be automated, right? But how many folks have, and this is a rhetorical question, how many folks have ever been in a situation where they're trying to put together a forecast and the client has no idea how much work is coming? It's happened to all of us. I think I've had one client, maybe two in my life, that was actually able to give me a real forecast that I could plug in to the tool, the technology, to create a forecast. All the other times, it's required a human project manager to either estimate what's coming down the line or to have that one-on-one conversation and really dig into the details. And lastly, we have technology on here. And I think it's important to talk about how a project manager, the project management core function, part of that is managing technology. Why? Because this really enables us not to look at technology as something scary that's necessarily going to replace project management. It's actually adding more to the project manager's plate, right? It's giving us one more thing to manage as project managers. We can be using translation memory systems, machine translation, query management systems, all sorts of different automations. But as of right now and in the foreseeable future, those systems are going to need someone to actually manage those systems. Moving on to vendor management, in our general theory, we lay out the case that there's different types of vendor management. We want to look at structured vendor management versus strategic vendor management. And structured vendor management is ripe for automation. And this is a hot topic right now in the industry. It's something that's finally getting a lot of attention from the technology space. Everyone, up until recently, there's been a lot of attention on how to automate project management processes, how to automate the translation itself through machine translation. Something that savvy technology companies right now are starting to look at, though, is how do we bring some automation and some intelligence, artificial intelligence, into the vendor management area. And invariably, this is approached from a very structured point of view, and it's something that works very well as long as there's a structured system. However, we do provide some flexibility with the vendor management because things, especially when it comes to vendor management, people management, if you're working with freelancers, anyone who's worked with freelancers know things are rarely ideal, right? So there's always this room for what we call strategic improvisation. And this is the, oh no, a client just dumped 10,000 words that they need translated by tomorrow morning into 19 languages, and I don't have people in my system. How am I going to fill that? And I have yet to see a tool that has been able to solve that problem. There's even if you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of linguists or resources or people, I don't like to use the term resources, people in your database, not all of them are going to be available without heads up. And I've been working with databases of tens of thousands of translators before, and I still can't find somebody who, none of them accept the project, and I desperately need to get this done. Whereas I've worked with excellent vendor managers in my time who have pulled miracles. They've gotten, we need 20 people for these obscure languages to show up on site at the clients for 40 hours of work next week, right? That requires a human being going out and finding those people, because I don't care how big your database is, you're not going to find those people without someone carrying out the vendor management function, whether that's you as the project manager or whether you have a dedicated vendor manager, or maybe your HR department does that for you. Remembering it's not a job title, it is a function. And moving on to the sales core function. This I'm talking about last, as I like to, because in the context of this presentation, I think sales, the core function as a core function of the LSP that adds value, is one of the last things that we're going to be able to automate. I'm not saying it's immune. Nothing is immune to automation, but this will hold out for quite some time. Sales consists of three components: marketing, selling, and account management. Most of us, when we hear the term sales, we think of the selling function, right? That's actually going out, responding to RFPs, talking to potential clients, winning the deal, right? Selling adds value through responding to RFPs, through providing consulting, really talking to clients and digging down, defining their needs. I've seen excellent salespeople through the process of selling to their clients add tremendous value because they're asking the right questions and they're providing consulting before the deal was even won. Marketing or account management after the deal is won it's something that people don't usually think of as selling. It is classified as selling because it's customer engagement and it's a great way to grow an account. But I've seen most of my experience, account management is usually carried out by the project manager. Some companies, if they're large enough, have dedicated account managers. The job description changes from company to company, but really when we're talking about account management, we're talking about talking to the client, building trust, anticipating their needs, visiting them on site, doing QBRs, all of those good things that help build trust and build a relationship. Marketing, I would put in the category of if something in the sales process is going to be automated or has already been automated, marketing is probably a pretty good candidate for this. Through the marketing function, LSPs put out quality content every single UTIC, for example, right? In text, we have all these wonderful companies out there that are making information available to end clients, to each other. And the ultimate goal, of course, is lead generation. But through that process, they're adding tremendous amount of value back into our industry just through the marketing core function. Marketing, certain types of marketing, whether it's social media marketing, content marketing, a lot of this can be automated largely. It's not completely automated, but maybe it's automated to a point where it takes one person to do it today. Where it used to take two people, right? When I'm working on Nimdzi, marketing strategy, content marketing, social media marketing, I have different tools and different automations where I can schedule stuff and I can see the analytics and I have make smart decisions on which strategy to follow based upon the analytics. So a lot of this has been automated, but it still requires a human touch. So that's our brief intro to the our general theory, this framework. I like to say the general theory of the translation company is not something that it's not something new, right? We didn't invent this. If we invented something, we'd be lying, right? What the general theory of the translation company does, though, is it provides us a framework to have other conversations, better conversations in the industry. Maybe this is something that we all know just instinctively because we've been working in the industry for quite some time, but this provides the terminology and the framework and the structure for us to have more conversations and better conversations about exactly how LSPs add value. So after this introduction, I would like to move on to just take a look at some of the research, right? Like most of us can talk anecdotally about what clients want in this industry, how to better serve them. But being a research company, we like to be data driven here. And we do have some research available on what exactly this client wants. So I want to share just a little bit of that with you. We've surveyed we've surveyed all sorts of different vendors in the industry, whether it's interpreting vendors, translation vendors, technology vendors, but we've also, some of our best research that we've done that is the most useful to language service providers is the work that we've done on client needs, right? So what are some of the insights that we've been able to pull out of our research and investigation into what clients want? Some of this may surprise you, some of it may not. Even the stuff where we're talking about and you say, oh yeah, well, I already knew that. It's good to have the data, because if we're not constantly questioning what we think we know, then we're potentially becoming ignorant or potentially developing a level of hubris that will prevent us from growing and evolving. And if we're going to survive as project managers in this industry that's being overrun by automation, as some people like to say, then we need to evolve. We need to survive. So we need to stay on our toes, not make assumptions. One point specifically around technology is clients, vendors, yeah, us as language service providers, people are using too many tools. This is something we hear over and over and over again in the industry, that people are sick of their using so many different tools. Clients particularly, they don't want another tool, right? So this is very important for us to realize as LSPs and project managers, if we're selling, carrying out the sales core function, is that every LSP that I've talked to, maybe not every LSP, most LSPs that we've talked to have a technology that they want to sell, right? If not sell, then they have a technology that they feel gives them a competitive edge over their competitors. They use it as a differentiator. What we oftentimes forget is, as great as we think our technology is or our solution is, sometimes clients don't want another technology. They have their own technology. And one thing that's a very important point is the larger their client gets, the less they want your technology, right? Technology has very, very, very useful applications, the smaller the client gets. Going down to, let's take an extreme example, individuals buying localization. They want to be able to log into a portal and just very easily upload their stuff and everything be technology driven. But the larger the client is, the less they're interested in that. Why? Oftentimes, well, and sometimes large and the age of the clients aren't correlation. There's no correlation there. There's some very big young companies, but oftentimes your larger companies have been around for a little while. So they've had a lot of time to develop their own internal tools. And the older a company gets, the more different systems it has running. And if this is not something that's actively managed, then pretty soon clients in particular, find themselves working with so many different technologies that are all somewhat integrated, but not fully integrated. They just don't want to work with another tool. So here, if looking at the data here, then we see that a good third of buyers, and this is a survey of localization buyers, right? A good third of buyers are working with more than 15 tools, right? Almost 5% of these poor guys are working with over 25 tools. And this is on a daily basis, right? This means every day they're having to work with all of these different technologies. It's inefficient for existing project managers. It's really inefficient for new project managers. This is a key blocker to scalability for LSPs, because it means every time they hire a new project manager, vendor manager, account manager, new translator or linguist, quality manager, it means they need to be trained on over 25 tools, and that takes time. The fewer number of tools, the smoother the onboarding process gets. Moving on, and if we have questions on that, we can come back to it. But moving on, one more piece of research here is this data represents, and I know the numbers on the side are hard to read. The reason for is all of this data that we're showing here is coming directly from our market research reports. We call them insight reports, right? Available to our partners online, and all of the data is interactive, these interactive visualizations, so that you can mouse over and everything. So this is a screenshot from that. That's why the numbers aren't showing. If this were live, I'd be able to go in here and drill down a little bit more. But the data is still good, right? I love this information right here because it shows what factors are important to language services buyers, right? And this is key for LSPs to understand, not just to know intellectually, but to really understand what are their clients or what are their potential clients looking for. And in the context of talking about automation, as we are in this webinar, technology doesn't make the top three, right? We have quality of translation, on-time delivery, and customer service. Then we have technology. And if we're looking at clients that see this as extremely important, i.e., something that's like a deal breaker for them, then it's not even close, right? 39.58% of buyers see technology as extremely as important compared to the next level up, whereas 83% of buyers see customer service as extremely important. If we add important to that, then we're going up to 97%. 97% of clients think customer service is extremely important. That's over technology. A lot of people compete on price, and if that's the niche that you're in, then that's great. Price is number 6. I'm sorry. So price doesn't even make the top 5 on here. And it's a shame because we see lots of LSPs changing their strategy and trying to differentiate on price, convinced that that's what customers need. And it's not. It doesn't even make the top 5. And of course, one note is this research is biased towards larger scale, a lot of times US-based end clients, right? So we're not dealing with individual markets. I know there's some markets out there, particularly in Asia and Europe, that are Eastern Europe, that can be more price sensitive if you're dealing with those end clients. But then again, most LSPs that we talk to are all, they usually have the same question, which is how do we sell to these big clients? How do we enter the US market? And it's something we have a lot of experience with. And one of the first things we tell them is stop trying to compete on price. You need to compete on customer service. You need to compete on quality, all these service level items. Moving on, I'm just going to check my time here. I think I'm doing okay, but I'm going to try to get through these next slides pretty quick. So I've got 4 things. I want to leave you with kind of 4 things to chew about. How do we rage against the machine? And I see this all the time, rage against the machine. Everyone thinks they're so clever. They think they're the first person, and I did too when I thought of it. How do we fight? No, I don't want to say fight. How do we manage ourselves through this process of the industry becoming more and more automated, right? I got 4 tips for you, and complete with pretty pictures. And these comics are taken from the General Theory of the Translation Company. They're taken from our book, right? Number 1, be client-facing. And when we're talking about being client-facing, I'm particularly talking about learn how to carry out the sales core function. I don't care if you're a project manager, learn how to carry out the sales core function. If you remember, that's marketing, it's selling, and it's account management. You don't have to do all of those. As a project manager, usually it's good enough just to learn account management. As a project manager, chances are you're already doing account management. If you're having weekly meetings with the clients, if you're talking to them on a regular basis, if you're serving their needs, they're coming to you as a trusted advisor, then you're already carrying out the account management portion of the sales core function, right? Why is this so important? Because at the end of the day, customers want somebody to rely upon. Customers buy from people. Customers don't buy from technology, right? So be people, right? Be what the technology can't be, and that's human, right? This is one surefire way to make sure that you're adding value, even as more and more processes become automated moving forward. And if you haven't had a chance to read this hilarious comic, then I'm sorry, it will be recorded. Number 2, anticipate customer needs, right? Now, artificial intelligence is claiming to do some interesting things here in learning and automatically learning what the client wants and being able to anticipate their needs. It's not there yet, and it won't be for a while, right? I have so in my house I have like 5 Alexa devices, right? And it's amazing how stupid they are at anticipating my needs. Even when I tell it exactly what I want. Oh, now Alexa's talking to me because quiet.
Sorry, I don't know that.
See, good point right there. Stupid. Technology's stupid, right? It will never be able to fully anticipate our needs. I think this is particularly important in language services because oftentimes as the professionals in language services, customers come to us because we are the experts, right? So many of my clients, excellent clients, wonderful people to work with, they've come to me and they didn't know anything about localization. It's some poor marketing manager. It's always the marketing manager who gets put in charge of localization, right? And they have no idea what it is. And they come to us and say, can you help us, right? And we say, yes. And what they want is expertise. What they want is information. But they can find both of those online, right? They can research, they can learn. Heck, there's even university programs where they could go take a class now if they want. They could buy our book, right? There's lots of ways for them to get information and expertise. But what they really want and what they really need is someone to hold their hand and guide them and ask them good questions and anticipate their needs. Someone who's going to know what they want before they even know that they want it, because they've been there before, they've done that, they've helped other clients through this process. And that's a service that we as project managers can perform every single day. Clients, I've worked with a lot of clients too that have come to us, and maybe it's because I'm working for a large LSP and they know that this LSP also works with, just hypothetically speaking, like big names like Amazon, Boeing, Google, Facebook, all of these big names, these big everybody knows, right? And they come to us because they want to know, how do they do it at these other, how does Microsoft do it? Right? And you guys do work for Microsoft, right? And like, okay, yeah. Well, we want that expertise. We want the expertise that you learned working for Microsoft, just hypothetically speaking at Microsoft. We want that same expertise, right? Because if you've done it for these other big companies, then you're going to be able to anticipate us. Even though we're nowhere near the size of these other big companies, you've helped them grow to the place where they are. And so you're going to be able to anticipate what we need before we even know what we need. Next, talk about technology. If you don't have technology, you should be talking about technology. Right? And this is very much in line with our previous point that you should anticipate customer needs. You don't, as a project manager, want your client leading the way in technology. You want to be leading the way. Once you lose the ability to lead your client through this scary localization process, then you lose your ability to add value to them. They can do it better themselves. Doesn't matter if they actually can do it better themselves, but at this point, they lose faith and they think they can do it better themselves. Or they start talking to your competitors, and your competitors say, don't worry, we can do this better than those guys, right? Because we have XYZ technology, right? And how you talk about technology is something strategically that you need to define with your senior management. So, like, what is our story? Have a unified story around technology, right? Your technology, you could have your own technology that you're selling, right? And so that's the company line. That's what you do when you talk about technology. You could not have any technology, and you could position yourself as, consultants, technology consultants, right? Where you're basically advising them, it's like, okay, here's all the technologies out there, and we're going to help you pick the best one. As a research company here at Nimdzi, we love talking about technology. We're doing some really exciting work. My colleague, Kostya Constantine Drench, I'm sorry, I forgot his last name for a second. He's doing some awesome work on this, where we're mapping out all the technology. We have over 400 different technologies identified. Each one of them is unique, has a unique service or value proposition. They're a little bit different. How do they compete with each other, right? This is very useful information to have as a project manager for an LSP, because it allows you to actually inform your client. If you're not adding value with your technology, you can add value to your client by talking about technology and guiding them and consulting them. The last thing, okay, I'm going to talk about it. Machine translation. Neural machine translation. Oh, it's even scarier now because we put another word in front of it, right? I'm not an expert on machine translation. I don't want to talk about machine translation, but you need to be talking about machine translation with your clients, because the last thing you want is your client to come to you and want to talk about machine translation, because at that point you've stopped leading the way. They are now leading you, right? And once they start leading you, you're not adding as much value to them anymore. Right? So learn enough about machine translation. It doesn't mean you need to recommend using machine translation to your clients. It can be, hey guys, as your vendor, we want to provide you some very useful information on what's happening in the technology space, and let's talk about machine translation. And let's take a look to see if it's a good fit for what you're doing. We can help you run some pilots. And a lot of times it's not going to be a good fit for what they're doing. But you want to guide that conversation and let them know it's not, because if they read the information that's available out there, they're going to come to you and say, this is a good fit. They've already made up their minds, and you've lost the ability to change their mind. Accept and evolve. When we're talking about automation taking everybody's job and everything's going horrible and the world is going to burn, as I hear some people talking about in the industry, I absolutely do not believe that. But I hear a lot of two camps, two schools of thought on this. One is, it will never take our jobs, ever. Our jobs are completely safe. We can just keep translating. We can keep doing things the way that we've always done them. And then I hear on the other side, which is, it's only a matter of time before technology takes over everything and we all need to learn new skills and there won't be anything left for us. A lot of these conversations are about machine translation, but it's important. There's a lot of automation happening in project management and vendor management, right? So none of us are immune to it. I'm somewhere in the middle. I say accept and evolve. Acceptance is passive. Acceptance is an understanding that this is the way the industry is heading, much like many other industries before us. And evolution is active, where acceptance is passive, evolution is active. Evolution provides us power, right? We have the power to control our own destinies in this. Yes, automation is going to change the industry. That's the acceptance. Now, what am I going to do about it? That's the evolution, right? And as long as we can remember that, it becomes less of a scary thought, right? We don't have to be afraid of the machines. We can recognize them for what they are and the value that they add. And then we can say, okay, how can I use this to my advantage? And my final thought here is to end on a high note. Say, don't worry, you'll be fine, right? There's no reason to panic on this, whether you're a translator, a vendor manager, project manager, account manager, sales, own a translation company. We'll be fine, right? This is not the end of the world. There is plenty more to do in the language services industry. We've survived literally since the first time humans talked, right? Language is old. Language is as old as human civilization, right? And written language is almost as old as that. So we've been around for a while. We've changed over the millennia, and we will continue to change, but we're not going anywhere. Why? First of all, because business relationships are built on trust, right? Customers want to, or people buy from people, and as we say, people buy from people that they like, right? It's hard. One of the things we looked at, one of the data points, I didn't talk about it, but one of the factors that influence a buyer's decision on which LSP to work with is previous relationships. This industry is relationship driven. Relationships are very important. You can't have a relationship with a tool or technology. Second reason is because technology breaks all the time, right? I've never seen a technology that was perfect, that worked 100% of the time. So when it breaks, the client wants a throat to choke, right? They want to know who to yell at. And it's kind of a joke. That's kind of being cynical. The client wants someone to help them fix it, right? The technology may manage the process, but we will still need project managers to manage the technology. Remember, it's one of the four things: people, time, money, technology, that is managed through the project management core function. And lastly, and this is a joke, don't take offense to it. It's kind of a joke. Clients are bad at their jobs still. This isn't going to change, right? Clients need localization project managers. They need their vendors to help them through. If we weren't adding value to the process by providing our services, but by providing our expertise, then they wouldn't even be working with us. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, they would be working directly with translators. They'd hire in-house translators, they'd work with freelancers, and they would do it all themselves. But at the end of the day, they need our help, right? Sometimes it's just because that's the way that the company's set up. Sometimes it's because it's easier to get budget to hire a vendor than it is to hire people. There's many different reasons, but I haven't seen the need for clients to engage with LSP. I haven't seen that need decrease throughout my years in the industry. If anything, it's as the process is getting more complex, as the technology is getting more complex, buyers of localization services need us more than ever. And as I like to say, don't worry, automation won't replace you because you're going to be prepared. However, it might replace the person sitting next to you, right? And this is a sober reminder that technology will mean that we need fewer people to do the same amount of work. Fortunately, the amount of work continues to grow. Right. If you look at the market growth, we've published a report. It's available on our website where we have market growth expectations for the next 5 years, I believe. We're growing as an industry. The amount of work to do keeps getting more and more and more and more. Right. So even as automation is allowing us to do more with less, the amount of sheer volume that is coming our way means the industry, as far as total headcount, is still growing. Right. However, the job description is changing, right? So if you don't accept and evolve, if you don't continue to learn, if you don't stay humble and continue to follow the patterns and the trends in the industry, keeping up to date on the latest research, making sure that you can speak intelligently about the latest technology development, then the likelihood that you're going to be replaced will increase. So don't be the guy sitting next to you. Be the guy that accepts and evolves and is prepared. Don't be the guy next to you. And I'll leave you with a quote here. This is from somebody. This is from Twitter, right? And I saw this and I said, wow, that's great. And then I realized they were quoting the general theory of the translation company. So, okay, I'm going to use that in my presentation. I forget who it was that posted this, but thank you. At the end of the day, the language service industry is still relationship driven. Nobody has yet been able to find a suitable substitute for human relationships. I believe this. This is true. AI can do a lot of things. It has not replaced human relationships yet. So with that, just one last final plug. My name is Tucker Johnson. Thank you very much for listening to me talk. I am the author of the General Theory of the Translation Company. I work for Nimdzi Insights, a market research and consulting company specializing in language services industry, client side, vendor side, technology side, everything in between. My contact information is here on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to me. Yes, my Twitter handle is funny. What everyone says when they get my business card. And that's it. So thank you very, very, very much for your attention. I hope you guys are still asleep. The sun is finally coming up here in Seattle. I'll turn it back over to Irina for...
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you, Tucker. It was a really fantastic speech. Now all the project managers are ready to the invasion of machines. You can turn your webcam on, and I have some questions for you.
Oh, shoot, webcam. Okay.
Hello.
You see me?
Yes, we can see you. Talking about people relationships, is it a good idea to make friends with your client representative, being polite and friendly first? Sometimes it can harm process and professional attitude.
Okay. No, I'm just digesting. It's an excellent question. I'm guessing this question did not come from an American, though. One thing, I think it's a cultural difference. I know here in America, we have a different, very casual way of approaching business. And I know that sometimes that can be seen as unprofessional or counterproductive to those that aren't from that culture. Do I think it's... I think this is a decision that needs to be made. There's no one right answer for this, right? I've had clients that I like personally. Okay, I can speak for myself. Personally, I like to maintain an air of professionalism in my interactions with my clients and my colleagues, right? So, for example, on social media, because that's where so much of our human interaction happens nowadays. This is perfect timing. I don't add my clients. I don't add my colleagues, my coworkers, people that I work with. I don't add industry people on Facebook because I want to keep that degree of separation. Now, if they add me, then I will accept, right? That having been said, I just recently decided, okay, I want to increase my my reach, my networking, I guess you would call it. I hate that term, networking, but I see all these other people that are engaging on social media, and I know that in other countries, Eastern Europe and Russia particularly, a lot of business happens on Facebook, right? So I've actually gone through and started adding people from the industry that I've known for years. I've just been afraid to add them, right? But as far as being chummy with the client, yeah, build a relationship, right? Social media side, build a relationship with them. Why? Because it's a lot harder for them. When something goes wrong, they're going to be mad. And they're going to want to yell at someone. They're going to want to write that mean, nasty email. They're going to want to escalate somebody they're going to want someone to get fired, right? And if they know you, if you've sat down with them with coffee, or bought them dinner, or even talked on the phone every week, then now you're a human being, right? And they're not going to be so quick to react. They're still gonna call you, but they're gonna say, hey, this is messed up. How do we fix it together?
Okay, yes, it's understood. Thank you. I have another question. Is it correct that risk management can't be automated? As sometimes we can predict some, unexpected issues, and we add value dealing with problems.
Yeah, so this goes back to like two of the points that I made earlier. One is anticipating client needs, right? And a good risk management plan, that's what it's supposed to do, is anticipate client needs, right? Even the best risk management plan isn't going to cover everything. You can't think of everything, right? And then there becomes a cost-benefit trade-off on how much time do I actually want to start analyzing the risk, and what is that worth? Like, how risky is it? So once again, it's a case-by-case scenario. Can that be automated? It can be made more efficient, right? And I would argue you don't even need technology to do that. Standard processes. If you have standard documented processes on how to deal with risk management, how to perform root cause analyses, that may be even more useful, because when it comes to risk management, we're trying to avoid when things go wrong, right? And things will go wrong, period. They always do, right? There's going to be something that goes wrong. And more interesting, that's what I tell clients. I say, don't ask vendors how they're going to make sure that nothing goes wrong. That's a stupid question to ask, right? Because no one can make sure that nothing goes wrong. Ask your potential vendors, when something goes wrong, what are your processes for dealing with it? And that requires a human, right? Even if the processes are automated, it requires a human, because emotions are involved. When something goes wrong, clients are mad and they want either a throat to choke or a shoulder to cry on. And that can't be done by a machine.
Yes, thank you. And I have another question and feedback about your book. It's from Olga Melnikova, project manager at Moravia.
Hi, Olga.
And our UTIC speaker. The book that you and Renato wrote is great. Can you please describe the process of writing it? It is always interesting to know how to co-authors do it. Did both of you contribute to each and every part, or you wrote half on a feed and Renato wrote another half? Overall, book is very useful, interesting, and very easy to read, and a big fun. I really enjoyed reading it, and I highly recommend it to everyone who is working in translation and localization industry.
Oh, I miss you, Olga. So okay, so how did we write it? Did we both collab? The answer to that question probably depends on whether or not Renato's listening. Oh, this is being recorded. I have to be nice. So the course was, the book was originally written. Renato had taught a course, a weekend lecture, seminar, workshop at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies in Monterey, right? He had the foresight to record that course. And he called me one day. The reason he called me, it sounds stupid. We're talking about Facebook, right? I got my job from Facebook right now, and I'll tell you how. Because he called me because he follows me on Facebook, and I can post some. I try to be funny on Facebook. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? So I post some entertaining stuff. And he always liked my Facebook post. They said they made him laugh, right? And he wanted someone to write a book with who could be funny, who could write humorously. And I believe that comes through in our book. It is a serious book, but it's meant to be written in a way that might not make you laugh, but at least makes you smile every once in a while, right? And so he had recorded his lecture at the Middlebury Institute, and he sent me the recordings, he sent me the slide deck. And, you know, Renato and I make a great team because he comes from a sales background and I come from a project management background. So he can talk. Man, I wish I could talk like him. He can just talk for hours. But organization wise, the man's a wreck, right? Like he's not going to sit down and write a book. I don't like talking, but I can sit down and organize thoughts. So we make an awesome team. The book was very collaborative. I basically took his presentation and wrote a book about it, and we collaborated together. We'd go over it, we'd fine tune it, and it was a really, really good process. We had an editor who worked on it, but it didn't take that long. Right. I think we had it written in, I don't know, 4 to 6 months, written and published. And lots of folks are coming up and asking me this question, like, Tucker, how do you do it? Because maybe they're interested in writing their own book. If you are interested in writing, and some folks, I know we have some excellent writers because I read their stuff, either in multilingual or either on blogs. We have some excellent writers in this industry. And anyone who's interested in writing, I encourage you to do that. It is a lot of work, but it is very rewarding. This book, I spent more time with for a few months there, I spent more time with my laptop than I did with my wife. Right? It was because I had a day job. I was working at the time. So I'd come home and I'd write. And then I'd wake up and I'd write. Then I'd go to work and I'd come home and I'd write. And I approached it that way. But if anyone is out there, and I am happy to be a resource to you, it's not as scary as it should be. I just wrote a friend of mine, a colleague, friend, we're all friends in this industry, an email last night saying, hey, I know you want to write a book. Just do it. And the subject line of the email I wrote was, just do it. Right? Because originally I was saying, like, hey, when you're ready to write this book, like, let me know. And then I said, actually, no, not when you're ready. Just do it. Because if you wait till you're ready, it's never going to happen.
Okay, thank you. That's all for today with questions. Thank you for being with us, and hope to see you at UTIC 2019 in Ukraine. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Dear attendees, if you have more questions to us, please write them down and we will pass them to our speaker on Facebook.
Yeah, add me on Facebook. Thanks, guys.
Bye. And to know how to stay in touch with us, find us on social media. We always list them on our video descriptions. I would like to announce our next webinar with Tatiana Yaroshenko. We will talk about Language Professionals Code of Ethics. The webinar will take place on the 19th of April at 4 p.m. GMT +3. And a couple of words about our sponsors. Our platinum sponsor is Language Solutions Pro, and the gold sponsor is Locus Global. We appreciate their support, and we are glad to meet our standing partners in our sponsors team. We kindly ask you to give us some feedback. Here is a form to let us know your opinion about the webinar. We don't say goodbye, as we will already meet you soon. See you in a couple of weeks.